Well, I kind of think, I know the dog.
Okay, let's go.
Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us here today. We hope that you guide us and are behind us as we're trying to make good decisions the best we can for the city. And as always, please be with those who keep us safe, our police officers, firefighters, and military personnel. And in your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the roll call is Cody Jackson.
Raymond Dix, please automatically.
Second.
Further discussion on hearing all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go. The agenda is before you, and I think it's pretty simple and straightforward.
I move the agenda.
Second.
Second discussion on hearing all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go. And so we're at the workshop discussion, correct? Okay. So tonight we're going to be talking about the capital facilities plan. And who's made it up with the public too?
There's someone that got it from that table. There, we put them up on the screen, we were concerned that people couldn't read them, so we hope you printed it up for everyone to get a copy.
Okay. So did everybody get an opportunity? These were passed out last week, right? So we get the opportunity to look them over. And our goal tonight, when Katie and RJ and Lisa and I were talking earlier, is to try to handle these in blocks. So the first blue box is block 1, number 1. The pink is number 2. The second blue is 3. Second second is 4, and the last blue is 5. So we want to talk about each block and then kind of move on, if that's okay. Makes it a little easier. And so with that, Lisa, why don't you tell people why we have a capital facilities plan? What it means.
I would love to do that. So we do this annually. This is a 6-year capital improvement program for the city. It's trying to be proactive in our planning for our capital improvements as well as our asset management. This is my Let's try that again. So this capital facilities plan was developed based upon the priorities that were identified by City Council and the Mayor in the 2018 strategic plan. What you have before you tonight represents staff's recommendation based upon the priorities that you have identified and resources that we have available to us in 2020, both financial and staff resources. This is our best recommendation in terms of what we as a staff feel like we have the capacity to handle. And so as you go through this process, I would ask you to consider that if you have something that is a higher priority and you want to move it into 2020, please consider what we have listed in 2020 that we can then push out, or what other resources may be made available to staff to deliver these projects. That's the caveat number 1. Caveat number 2, there's a lot of projects in here that are listed in purple. We have tried to include all of the projects that have been mentioned over the last year or so in council and others. There are some staff recommendations. Anything that is new is identified in purple. Where we had a good cost estimate for it, you'll see the cost estimate in the project total, but you won't see any dollars assigned to it because the question before City Council is the purple ones are specifically for you to discuss and to make a determination if they are something that you want to fund, when you would want to fund it, et cetera. I've highlighted a couple things in yellow. The yellow items are ones that have changed, other than we were kind of scratching our heads on a couple in the first category that had to do with kiosks and the River District Community Message Board, and those were ones that we just wanted to ask you, are those still valid projects? Other than that, you see in orange, those are things that were in the Transportation Improvement Program. As I've said previously, there have been some changes to what was in the 6-year TIP that was adopted in July based upon better estimates for cost, better understanding of realistic timing of those projects, those sorts of things. There's also a couple of projects that are identified in here in 2020 that we are anticipating TIB funding for. One of them at 70% of the total cost. One of them is the signal at Central Valley School District High School, Ridgeline High School entrance. The other one is grinding overlay for Liberty Lake Road. If we do not get funding for the grind and overlay for Liberty Lake Road, we would recommend that not be done. As of right now, we won't know until November whether those projects are funded or not. The last thing I just wanted to mention to you is just because there have been a lot of revisions as we have sharpened our pencils and fine-tuned what we think was realistic for this year. And so there is a list on the last page of revisions that have happened since September 17th when I introduced the draft to you. So that just summarizes what has changed. So that's kind of the big picture overview. We've given some thought to how we manage, provide some document control going forward. Today is a workshop where we're looking to seek your input and to hear your thoughts. I'll be keeping notes here. You can decide at the end of this whether you want to make motions to move certain changes to this, or whether you would like to do that at a later date. That's a question for you at the end of this. Do we schedule another such meeting? When do you want to bring this back? But we would ask that this is a proposal before you, and we would ask that council make their recommendations in the form of a motion, and then you all act on those motions to make amendments going forward so that we can track what you as a body are recommending to us, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Just to clarify, Lisa, aside from the budget constraints, it sounds like you said the staff recognizes what's in the proposal as doable, I'll say, in terms of resources.
It's an aggressive schedule, but we believe it to be doable, yes.
I'm just observing that people plus cash is our action, and reasonably, people's in good shape based on what we see right now.
We have, this is also premised on some staffing additions that will come out in the mayor's budget.
Other questions, Lisa?
Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty as
Yeah.
that goes
I'm
on.
sure they will. If you don't mind, I'm going to rotate around so that I can take notes as you all talk about this. And if I don't capture your comments adequately, please let me know. Thank you.
So we're just gonna go line by line then, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, that's one of the things. Bob, did you have a question for Lisa?
Well, I just had a question about, I think one of the projects I saw was the Liberty Lake Road overlay. You talking about Liberty Lake South?
This one.
Okay, but that wasn't specified.
Yeah, we'll try to, that's what we
Between
want.
Alleyway and Sprague.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we delineate.
No.
Yes,
I'm
and
sorry.
that actually is in
Sprague.
that is in attachment A, which is the project descriptions.
Okay.
So we try to keep the spreadsheet manageable in size and digestible.
I think the best thing to do is, and I always like to just start from the top and work down, and then kind of across. So the trailhead master facility master plan is in for $100,000. Was to be done this year, but we're still trying to get that
We,
contract on board.
we anticipate having the contract for that on the council agenda for October 15th. So the Trailhead Master Plan, I would expect that some dollars would roll over into next year, the amount to be determined. But yes, we're expecting to bring that contract back.
I guess the other question I would have is, what is the duration do you anticipate that to be? I mean, is it like 6 months or? So, I mean, you can't really spend any money until you have a plan, right?
Right, well, that's exactly right, which is why the next line, Trailhead Facility Upgrades,
Right.
is to be determined.
I know.
But yeah, I would expect that with the process, the engagement and outreach, this would be somewhere between 6 and 8 months.
Okay, so what reason I'm asking that is because we're still trying to plan out a 6-year operational thing. The councils would probably want to make some kind of determination as to, well, hey, if we get it done in 2020 as far as the plan, maybe the implementation is 21 or 22.
So one suggestion might be that you, as a body, consider providing some placeholder funding to begin whatever is recommended in 2020. That's to begin design or whatever. Because this is just going to be a master plan, so we'll still have to go out for design services.
Right, so we're trying to get all that information out, so when we talk about this line by line work, it makes sense as we go, right?
So Mayor, just for clarification, we wanted to talk about them in groups, and we were going to listen to all the council members because we really wanted to hear the input. So not rather than doing line by line, we're going to do the groups.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess,
A lot less confusing to go line by group.
Yeah.
That's where you're going line by line within the group, I think is where you're headed.
yeah, I mean, we're trying to distill the information from the top down. And sometimes easier to one at a time as opposed to going back and forth. So, the Trailhead Facility Master Plan is currently scheduled for $100,000 this year. We probably won't spend it, maybe spend some to initiate that guy. So we'll have some rollover, whatever that is, or rollover 90,000 each.
If the contract, I would recommend just, until we know more, right now, we just go with another 100,000, because we don't know when the actual procurement of the contract will happen.
So just roll it into 20.
Because by the time we do it, you're looking at late November. The contract's gonna dictate how much is gonna get spent, so if the contract's 80,000, 90,000, that's what's gonna dictate. The budget amount's just there to cover both years.
Okay. So kind of a 50,000, 2080 or something like that.
So, yeah, we are, just leave both years, 19 as 100, leave 2020 as 100,
Okay,
but the contract will dictate how much actually gets spent. So
okay.
I'm not printing new money.
That's creative, aren't you? Okay. So then the Trailhead facility upgrades, we have to project some kind of, there, do you think, or not? Mike?
Well,
Or-
No, go ahead, Mike.
I don't go line for line, but we're talking about the trailhead. I would like to suggest we take into consideration where we have down here, there's to be determined expanded City Hall meeting room, and also golf carts, charging station. If we're in the process of talking about trailhead, I've always envisioned that this City Hall is really part of trailhead, because we have the putting thing out here, the chipping thing out sort of there. I would like to see us, when we look at the trailhead, we look at also how we can incorporate things like City Hall and anything between City Hall and trailhead. Because if we're going to go for funding for trailhead, we're either going to put it to the voters, or we're going to do a council act bond, we're likely to do something like that. So my thought is, if we're going to be in that position, let's look at what the overall project would be.
So maybe like to be determined, kind of like, to be determined, like an MP master plan type thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I said, just to reiterate, is that if we're going to look at a major project over here, let's look at here also, because this is part of the whole thing.
Yeah, but it won't take place in isolation, that's against my thoughts. We wouldn't go put up a charging station today? That's the question,
Put up a charging station today?
for the golf carts. I'm just,
No, I'm just saying, include those items in the overall.
that's, Chris?
So Mike, going off what you were saying, I guess my question is, because you were talking about wrapping like the city hall area in with that, but my question is, was that included in the RFP that we sent out? So it wasn't, so that would be an additional cost, I
Right.
would expect.
That's what we have, I believe that's what we have, is to be determined. I know this has come up periodically, but like I say, we're gonna have such a big investment over here in the trailhead, that maybe just a good time to look at the overall picture.
Shane?
I don't think we can put a dollar value on it to be determined. I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves. We have zero clue what they're gonna tell us. I think it would be very misleading for us to even do that. I think that we need to get the analysis done and set up a game plan from that.
That works. But Mayor, if I could suggest something just to help us with our note-taking, is there's a lot of items in here. A lot of equipment, there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of transportation and maintenance. We were really looking for feedback is, do we have the content correct? Are there things in here that you want to keep? Are there things in here you don't want at all? Or are there things that aren't in here that you want? We were really wanting that kind of feedback. And then, as far as the cost and when and all that, that can be part of the conversation as well. We just wanted to make sure that we've captured everything, as opposed to going through the details of what exactly the,
I think most of us are
the
prepared
details.
to go through the
I think
detail.
some of them need detailed discussion.
do you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And some of them have changed from last year on the dollar value.
Okay, then we can go over those and explain what happened on those.
So, we've kind of discussed the trailhead facility upgrades to the city hall, meeting rooms, the golf cart charging station to be part of this master planning process, correct? No?
No, it wasn't part of the RFP, so it'd have to be a separate expense.
It would be separate, yes.
I know, but I mean, from a standpoint of,
They're two separate entities.
Right.
They're entirely two separate entities.
So are we
I think it
adding,
would be a mistake to put them all
so are we
together.
looking to add a line item for city
want,
hall
we could-
or expanding the RFP?
Comment? Mr. Mayor?
just,
My recommend, if I confuse people, I apologize. I didn't mean to take that and add it in with trailhead. What I'm looking at is those items would be totally separate. They'd be totally separate, but we would look at them at the same time.
Gotcha. That makes more sense.
Okay.
so that would be a, we're not gonna assign any numbers to them, right?
No,
That's
So
the
just-
whole-
Not just
I
right.
don't
So
see
they're
where
still in there, right, so we didn't take them out, we just still, two to be determined, right?
Yeah.
We decided, I think, so what the trailhead facilities upgrades, we don't want to assign value until we get a master plan, any kind of dollar figure.
Yep.
That leads us to the public works yard development. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I think this is pretty much what we expected. The comments are right in line with what we've been talking about.
We're good there?
Okay.
And the Rocky Hill shade structure. Rocky Hill parking lot expansion.
I have a question on the shade. I know we talked about this last year, look at that 20,000. The shade structure, is it realistic, we think we could get something like that for $20,000?
I was thinking that too.
Because, you know, when we look at our pavilion, we're gonna be putting in Orchard Park, so we went from 400,000 to 500,000, gonna sneak up to 6. So I know that came up last year, it was a question of that dollar amount.
Thank you.
So who's looked at this?
Jen's got an answer.
So, yeah, I
I
guess I'm,
received quotes from a couple of vendors on a shade structure. It started out as an initial shade cover covering the entire playground, but we can actually do singular shades over the tower portions of the playground, if you will. So the highest areas just have their own little shades. It's a custom retrofit to the playground.
So it's like canvas or?
Yeah, and they're well over 20,000.
Were they kind of like the triangle canvas material?
It's kind of like a canopy,
Yeah.
that's how.
Yeah, there's that option, and then the option to just do a shade right over the tower part of the playground. We're not talking a whole span or a whole shelter or anything that large and significant.
Thank you.
Okay.
Question, was there some idea, we were to do that at 20,000, what was the life expectancy of this type of equipment?
The life expectancy of most of the playground equipment is anywhere from 10 years to 20 years.
Oh, very good, okay.
For the shade
For the
itself?
shade structure.
The
Shade
shades are
itself.
gonna be about 10
Okay.
because of the deterioration of the
Yes,
weather.
the
The
weather.
herds, the infrastructure is more like 20 to 25 years.
Very good, thank
Now, if
you.
it's a canvas structure like you were saying, is
It-
that something we can take down in the winter?
Yes, it would be something where we could, remove it through the weather season.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, good there. Rocky Hill parking lot expansion. It's a to be determined.
I'd like to hear more about that, because I know it came up earlier in the year, and it kind of felt like it got tabled because we weren't sure where we would be able to expand.
So, it was an item that was prioritized in the 2018 strategic plan. I'm sorry, I'll get one. That was a project that was prioritized by council and the mayor in the 2018 strategic plan. It was very low on the list of projects. When we did the capital facility plan last year, no dollars were assigned to it. And so it's purpled because the question is, do we keep it in there and do we want to assign some dollars in some out years for that?
If I could add, the genesis of that, I believe, was when we did the park master plan several years ago, and it came up as something that was brought up by the community, so it was added. And then, like Lisa said, we continue to carry it, don't have any money to it, don't have any plans for it. So it just came out of a community meeting many years ago.
Question. I would like us to seriously look at getting some dollar amount on something like that, because, you know, we've grown substantially in that area, and the parking is always full there, always. And individuals on some of the big events is actually parked on that main street, which has caused a challenge. Police has come by and asked them to move. But I think that would be somewhat of a priority, such as the additional parking we put over here at the ball field, because it really does get filled up very quick.
To say that, Mike, would you project into the 2021 or 2023? When about would you think to begin considering spending?
Well, 2020.
Well, I think based on the discussions we've had, adding things in 2020 probably require moving something else out, based on the workload that they're facing next year.
Shoot for 2020 and we'll settle for 2021.
Well, I mean, it's to be realistic about what we can do in time and cash.
Yeah, right.
So,
What would be,
Mr. Egan, follow?
what would be an estimate of that parking lot? What do we pay for the parking lot over at this last?
I'm sorry, I would have to get back to you on that answer. I can't do it off the top of my head. It is going to vary significantly depending upon how many stalls, how much grading, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm just talking about
Roughly $10,000 to $12,000 a stall.
a stall, so if you put in 20 stalls, you're $200,000.
Roughly. And there is a lot of on-street parking, I think it's Windrock and
Right.
Country Vista. But, yeah, so I don't know that, you're right, the parking off of Country Vista is fairly limited.
So the 25 stalls would be $250,000. So, I mean, you want to put that maybe in 2021? I'm just,
2021. Because what I'm hearing, if we're to add something for 2020, we need to take something off. $250,000 is a pretty big hit, even though the parking is important. But I think there's other things are priorities for $40 million.
I think 2021 will be a good benchmark, a goal for us to hit, knowing that this is going to be a working document.
I agree.
Evolving.
so, I'll get 2 250 in all years and then 250 in the 2021, right? Yeah. Then with the Rocky Hill splash pad,
So, the Rocky Hill Splash Pad was a project that was changed in last year's CFP. So it had been in a prior CFP, but because of all of the challenges we had with permitting the splash pad at Orchard Park, first of all, the dollar amount that we had listed, and second of all, the amount of effort to permit it was daunting to the city.
so the question is that, did it go away, or?
It's purple because, again, it was, a council member mentioned that they'd like to see it at least on the list so that you would have a formal conversation about that. So again, anything that is on the list, particularly the purple items, we're really looking for council to say, to make a motion to either keep it or to get rid of it.
And you?
Sort of similar to the parking lot, I'd love to see that pushed to 2021, and we're gonna have another year under our belts of getting some community feedback there on whether they like the Orchard Park splash pad, what sort of, what their opinions are. So maybe we can table it to a discussion in 2020 and build in 2021, or remove from list.
Yeah, or either leave it on there with no date.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm really in favor of keeping it on the list, though.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Okay. So keep it on the list, no date determined, right?
Okay.
Town Square Master Plan, had 75,000 all years, and 21 was a $75,000 commitment. Still on board with that.
So it looks like we're looking to move that, staff's recommending to move it to 2021, is it
I think it is on the 2021.
no, I've got the old marked up version in, and so
It's
I
on
wanted
the
to see the
2021.
things that got marked off.
Yeah, so this is one that we don't think we have the capacity, and frankly, I think that with Trailhead Master Plan going on, you're gonna get stakeholder burnout as well.
Yeah.
And so at the best I think we can do is 2021. I know it was a high priority for council, but we recommend that we at least push it out another year.
Okay. And then you have the Town Square Park expansion to be determined.
Well, I think that would need to come after the master plan.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
We have for the master plan, right? So that's still a to be determined, right?
Yeah.
Fawn Heroes Circuit Course in Orchard Park, 70,000.
Kind of question about that. I thought the ones that we've done previously have been about half of that each.
They've been about 37 or 40,000.
So I'd like, is there a particular reason why that number's almost doubled?
Yeah, I think,
That was the dollar amount that was in the budget, and it was actually the budget for this year, for 2020.
I thought we talked about maybe doing two
But we
though.
pushed it.
yeah,
We did.
It was
Is
two.
that where the
That's why it's
70 came from?
70,000.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
But I don't think we had two at one spot. This is specific to
Yeah.
Orchard Park.
Right, so if it's gonna be just the one in Orchard Park, I would propose changing that to 35.
okay, that sounds good.
Because the other ones were 35. I mean, I don't know if they were considering cost of goods going up, or
No, I think 35 is very,
is it
It
definitely?
seems like 35-40 was what we were
That
saying.
was, yeah, that was the norm.
I'd be okay with leaving with 40 just in case we have,
Right.
there's been some increases in costs.
Inflation.
you want, what, 40? Okay, sound system for Orchard Park Pavilion. What's it gonna cost? We have our sound system put in,
At Pavilion Park, we enjoy it, it brings it so much better setup and everything. So
We
we
paid
thought
about
we would add it
$20,000
to
for it.
Orchard Park. Pardon me?
we paid 20,000 for
A little less than that.
And I do want to jump back to the Fawn Heroes Circuit Course, because I had brought up how Multi-Care has programs to fund projects like this, and we can get it at no cost when they have programs like that available, and they said this is exactly their wheelhouse of what they like to do. And I know we have the point of contact of who's in charge of that, their head of government affairs.
So you want to put money in there, or do you want to take the money out? And
Well, I think we need to reach out to them and see what we can get.
Well, I know, I
And-
understand that, I'm
Can we
just
make
asking.
it a green item, which is the capital projects by others?
You
Maybe
could,
change the code
and that
on it?
makes a lot better,
Well-
because you have to make the, if you put the number in there, you're trying to determine who's gonna pay for it.
Exactly.
If we're gonna pay for it, fine. If you anticipate that somebody else will pay for it, then it has to go into this request.
Right.
So that now we have the administration be able to go out and request that fund
Right.
from the.
So the green projects, projects by others, are generally developer-driven or by someone else. The reason why they're on this plan is because they're potentially reimbursable through TIFA. And so we have to have them on our capital facilities plan in order for them to be reimbursable. That's what that green category is about. For all other projects that are city-initiated, even if there's grant funding, first of all, we have to budget for the full amount, and then that's number one. So, and number two, we then have notes regarding where the funding. So I think that's a great idea. We can absolutely look into the funding and, a grant. Very rarely is a grant not a matching type of situation, but we could absolutely look for that. I think the reason it got pushed out a year, in part had to do with, again, staff capacity, because we've got a lot going on in facilities and facility maintenance also.
So I think from the perspective of, we need to figure out why it was initially 70, and understand that better, because there might be something we're not understanding. Secondarily, we need to reach out to Multi-Care to figure out how much they can put toward a project like this, and that could in turn dictate if it gets bumped up sooner. Because if they can pay for the whole project, why wouldn't we do it sooner than later?
Staff.
Understood,
Staffing.
understood, but how much is staff going to cost in relation to a project of this
It's not
capacity?
the cost of staff, it's the capacity of staff to handle the workload. And we have a tremendous number of asset management projects that Jen's team is going to have to be handling next year based upon the recommendations that came out of the facility analysis that we did. And so again, it becomes, I'm not saying that it can't be done, but
Right.
the question is, if we move it up, what else are we going to then take off the list or
Right.
push out?
I get that. I'm just saying if they have the ability to fund the whole thing, we have to be open-minded.
So part of the first step would be to have a design put together, and then price tag to that design, and we don't have the design yet. So if we design to the 45, or the 40 or the 70, we could probably do either. I'm wondering if our on-call engineer could put a design concept together. So there'd be a cost
The
associated
question
with
that
that.
you have, Pete, is kind of like where the Fallen Hero Circuit course came from in the beginning, right? So it came out of the community-driven group, the Fallen Heroes. And this is kind of their wheelhouse. And, from our standpoint, when we stepped in, it was because they were having a difficult time. The initial plan was to have them raise the funds and build the thing. And they had a little difficult time of trying to get all that stuff done. And so the city stepped in and really kind of made that happen. And we tried to do one a year. And then we realized that, hey, if you're going to do a course, you have to have this thing to be completed. So we jumped in and I think built 2 or 3 within the same year. So I would suggest that we take the Fallen Heroes course, this one at Orchard Park, contact the committee again, Bobby Weiss and his crew, to sit down and delineate what we want to do, have them drive that staff. Talk to them about the opportunities of other people maybe funding this for a named source or whatever, like Multi-Care or Innovia or whatever. So that's how I would do it, and then and you kind of keep the money in there, at least like you say, we're looking for somebody to replace that money, so that money can be used elsewhere, correct?
Right, I could ask Bobby to come to a future council meeting and kind of give us an update on the group and what their priorities are.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So we're at, we talked about the sound system, we're at Orchard Park Community Gardens.
We skipped the sound system.
No, we did that.
We talked about
that.
Sounds good.
Okay,
The community gardens was a staff recommendation for people.
Sorry, on the sound system, it's in 2021. Is that again
It
a
is on the
staffing
top.
issue, or is there a reason we're not doing it 2020 with pavilions?
Just budgeting and staffing.
Building the pavilion over there, when is that scheduled to be done?
It's under construction right now, it'll be done this year.
Depending on the weather, I would say
Yeah.
probably next month or the following.
I guess to Jen, right, I mean, when we talk about staff, especially this is, now we're in park programming. So what do you see Orchard Park doing in 2021? Or 2020, I'm sorry.
2020, we foresee reservations beginning, formal reservations similar to Pavilion and Rocky. Getting a feel for what the capacity of that park is going to be the first year. We also have inquiries from some of the groups like Skyhawks wanting to lead a handful of camps over there. Nothing like Pavilion and Rocky at this point, but starting to kind of dabble over there with park programming slowly but surely, baby steps. There isn't a huge amount of programming planned for next year, but definitely stepping out of the gate and baby steps to kind of dip the water over there so the residents on the north side have close access and don't necessarily have to come over to Pavilion or
But
Rocky.
are you gonna have I mean, the reason we put in the sound system is because we have the speakers, some of those other things. Are
Events.
those events gonna take place over there next year? or-
I would foresee events taking place over there,
So then
yes.
maybe have
Big,
that in the.
Large-scale events similar to Pavilion, maybe not the quantity the Pavilion has. I mean, Pavilion's been there a long time and is well established. But
So
large-scale events that would utilize a system such as this.
then I would take it in the fact that you probably wanna have it in 20, the 20,000 for the sound system in 20.
We would, but it was a budgeting thing. We were trying to measure in the budget world what the priorities are, what's more important, some of our asset management or our sound system for Orchard Pavilion. And it came down to the fact that, yes, we could physically staff-wise do that project next year, but we had other budget number priorities that fell into that asset management area.
Okay, well, I'm gonna throw this in there because this is what this is all about, right? So the goal is to decide when you need it, right? That's what the capital facilities plan is about, and the timeline. And if we really need that in 2020, because that's when the activity can take place, we at least need to put a question mark in there, because if you're just sitting there saying it's all budget on the bottom line, there may be some things on the bottom line are in 20 that need to go to 21. You see what I'm saying? I'm just throwing that out as maybe put in a question mark there as to time. I mean, that would be a priority for, if you had $20,000 laying around to utilize. Right.
Sorry. Okay. I agree with the mayor. My struggle right now is looking at this, and I don't see exactly what line item, I don't have a line item that says this was higher priority than that. That makes it really hard for us to make money. I'm not doubting, because I know you've been doing a lot of work on asset management stuff, and that makes it really challenging for us. Because there's
If I could, I'd like to suggest, if you recall, the September 17th version that we introduced to you, which was still a working draft, had front-loaded asset management as recommended by the company that came in and did the assessments. And what you'll see, if you look at the Parks and Public Facilities Asset Management, the reason why all of these facility lines are yellowed out is because we looked at what was front-loaded in 20 and 21 and realized that we could not do it both based upon staffing, but even more based upon the cost. And so Jen really sharpened her pencil, and she took a good look at how to move things out so that we could spread the cost more evenly over the next 6 years, which is, again, more sustainable from a budget standpoint. But, again, the question becomes one of, as we push these things out, are there new things that are of a higher priority? And that is not necessarily staff's looking at it from, we said that the priority was asset management and protecting our existing investments, so that was the decision. You as city council, mayor and city council, you can decide that the priorities are different. This is just our best proposal.
Just like to comment.
Yeah.
Councilman Severs, brought up a good point, and when you
Can't
really
hear.
think, son,
Okay, press hard.
also, the Councilman Severs brought up a good point about the priorities. And I think that maybe our methodology here is a little backwards. If you recall, last year, we developed a strategic plan and our priorities first. Then we integrated the capital facilities plan into that strategic plan. In the strategic plan, we established the priorities, the things that we thought were important. And then from that, we developed the priorities for the capital facilities plan. We didn't do that this year. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't go back and look at those priorities and say, and I brought this up at a previous meeting, which are our priorities? Are they the same? Should those be changed? Should they be expanded? The strategic plan should be a dynamic plan and not a static one. It shouldn't always stay the same year after year after year. You have to make it dynamic. You have to look at it and change it and evaluate it and make changes to it. I'm willing to go through this exercise, but I think that it really is not the right approach, I think, to the capitalist facilities plan. We're one of the few cities in the state which has integrated a capital facilities plan into their strategic plan. I don't think Spokane's done it yet. So I think we've done a good job in doing it. It's just that I don't think the capitalist facilities plan should drive the strategic plan. It should be the other way around. Thank you.
Good comments.
Shane.
I can keep my hand up all day if you want me.
There you go.
So I think the question we should be asking, since we want to move this to 2021, knowing that they're going to have events there, and I apologize I didn't ask this earlier, Jen, is what are your ideas for sound systems in the interim?
So in the interim, we would do what we've done at Pavilion for years, and either the group scheduling the event, holding the event, would have to bring their own, which many people have. And they have to go through the whole electrical permit process, which has been a new challenge for us this last year. Or if it's a large-scale event with a band, they bring in their own professional systems anyway, so that wouldn't affect any of the large-scale professional type groups and bands. So it would roll like we've done for the 8.5 years I've been here at Pavilion. I mean, this was a brand new year. We didn't get that thing installed until mid-season. We've been doing it. That to me is why it fell a little bit lower on the priority list also. It's not this crying need for a system, but it is definitely a great amenity to have. It's well used. It lessens the electrical permitting process for people. We did lose some business, if you will, some reservations this year because of that process was so daunting for many. But it's definitely doable without it.
Do you know ballpark how many we lost?
Oh, maybe 5 reservations, nothing groundbreaking.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
I would be inclined to follow Jen's lead on the 2021 based on your comments about, we're just kind of ramping up this next summer. I think it'll give us a good idea of what to expect in the future. And I definitely agree with you prioritizing the other assets that you need for turf management and things like that over this.
Perfect. Okay. Get it there, all righty. And then, Pritchard Park Community Gardens, we've gone over that. The library facility upgrades. Councilman? Any comments? We've got a to be determined. We're still waiting for the stuff to be.
Yeah, so we are currently in the process of doing our community needs assessment library master plan. So I'm expecting to have that presented to council the second meeting in December. I think that's the 18th. And once we have that, then we'll take a look at, based on these recommendations, what should our next steps be? So we wanted to put the line in there, say to be determined, just so there's placeholder, and then we'll make a determination once we actually have that report back.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Public art.
So the Parks and Arts Commission came up with their 4 or 5 year strategic plan for 2020 through 2023. And based on their recommendation, the total came to $61,500. We're also anticipating carrying over part of the Pavilion Park mural project if that does not get completed and build out this season. It may not, we're not quite sure. So to that, we added, I think there's a note there that says 7,000 rolled over from 2019 into 20, and that's what that is for the Pavilion mural project. So the 61.5, the budget document, there's a document that will be in the budget packet like last year showing there's 5-year or 4-year strategic plan, and it'll have the table with the breakdown through each year, what each project is, and the anticipated budget line item for those projects to equal 61,500.
Chris?
I'll be the bad guy, because I was the bad guy last year too. So I think last year we started out with about 70, and we've cut that in half to about 35. What do we expect the actual expenditures to be into, including, assuming you spend the 7,000 somewhere that going over? What was the
Oh, I'd
spending?
have to look and see where we're at right now. I haven't looked at that line item in a while. Arjun, you know right off the top of your head where we're at?
So we can report back to you
Yeah.
for that.
I'd give you a best guess, but I'd hesitate to do that. I'd rather have a solid number.
But just in general, you feel it, like, there was probably some left over.
Oh, yes,
So-
definitely. They had so many sponsorships this year that they budgeted for the project, but sponsors and donations stepped up, and that was huge for them.
So what makes us think that that won't continue into next year to go back to almost doubling what we put in
This-
for last year?
This is, I don't know that worst case scenario is the right word, but this is the full meal deal, in case there weren't a sponsor, or there wasn't a donation or a donor out there willing to help. We always anticipate and foresee that there's probably gonna be somebody willing to step up and help, but that's not something you can bank on,
Right.
that's not a solid bet. This gives them some hard, solid numbers to budget from.
I mean, I would probably reserve any more comments until I actually see, the list for next year. Maybe go over that at a future meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you guys did an amazing job with your budget last year, phenomenal job, utilizing it to the best of your resources. I was too curious how it jumped from 35 and then to be determined every year up to 70. So I'll be excited to hear what projects you guys have in hand, ideal-wise.
Okay. So we'll leave that as it is, right? Making changes to kiosks. Question mark there. Chris, that was one of your.
Yeah, so this one had come from one of the, something out of one of the Transforming Local Governments meetings at conferences that Mike and I had gone to with regards to improving our communication for the public, out in public. I know we haven't talked about it in a long time. I think it's worth revisiting, but I don't have a problem with the 2022 date. I know I continue to have some conversations. I happen to, from a long ago past, actually ended up knowing one of the reps. And I think we have some challenges with regards to where they would go because we do have the harsh winter. So I mean, personally, I'd like some more time to investigate that, but I wouldn't have a 2022 date, at least for me,
No
makes
change to what we
sense.
got then? Looks pretty good. Okay.
Okay, okay, and then River District Community Messaging Board. Okay,
So we put this in here not knowing exactly, we put this in the list so we could keep track of it. We weren't sure exactly where to put it because of all the growth and development. We figured once it kind of grew out, we could kind of figure the right place. Plus the fact that I believe Selkirk Middle School is going to have a message board. And we were going to talk to CD about putting our messages on their board. So it's still underway, we haven't nailed anything down.
leave it as outlined.
That's my suggestion, and the $20,000, to be honest, is just a guesstimate. We spent more than that, I believe, on the message board, not too much more, a little bit more on the one that we have here.
I think we were into this one over 57,000. I don't have a challenge with it being out in 2022.
So as, you know, as people, their driving patterns and their walking patterns develop, we can find the right spot. Because once you put this in somewhere, it's kind of there. And with the Selkirk Middle School maybe covering the Mission Avenue area, maybe this would be more up off of Harvard or somewhere around Regina and Bitterroot. Just a thought.
Okay. Dog park.
So this came up at a council meeting, Councilmember Langford's not here today, we just put it in there to track it and get feedback.
And staff does have a recommendation on that, that if you decide to do something with that, that we would recommend that you have funding in there for siting and design in 1 year and construction in a different year. And please not 2020 or 2021.
I think the community engagement part's gonna be very, very key.
Community engagement, liability issues, we need to look into that. Staff time to keep it clean. There's a lot of factors involved.
And also considering that we have a park just a little over a mile away.
Okay, so it's still to be determined, Bob?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring up, we have a great place for it on North Country Vista Boulevard. There's a big swale out there. Everybody uses that as a dog park already. So, all you have to do is put a fence around it and it's done.
We don't own it.
We have a roving,
Goat.
Jen's little animals that come in.
The goats.
Goats, and they can herd the goats. Moving on, expand City Hall meeting room and the golf carts, we're gonna leave those to be determined, is that correct? And so the council chamber recording hardware. Okay,
Anita has done a tremendous amount of research. We've gone and looked at Airway Heights. We're looking at Spokane tomorrow. We've talked to the Valley. We're doing all our due diligence on research, what works well, because we don't want to buy products that aren't tested and proven. We have a proposal. We're putting the finishing touches on it, and we plan to bring it to the next council meeting on October 15th. And we also are looking at a city clerk software management tool, which will greatly serve Ann Swenson in her retrieval of documents, as well as provide easier access for our community to access agenda items and ordinances and resolutions and the whole lot. So that's the number that we're looking at. Over the first year investment, which would be 2020, is the $25,950. We feel those are good numbers, and it would basically upgrade what we have Anita doing right now. She has a lot more information than I do. Yeah, that's a good number for, I think, a package of software and hardware that would improve what we do now.
okay.
Question.
Up,
Yes, I just wanted to comment. I don't know whether it belongs in this first section or not, but, you know, I've long lobbied for a senior center in Liberty Lake. And I just sent one of the Parks and Arts Commission people, I sent them a copy of Spokane Valley's monthly newsletter showing the 30 or 40 different programs that they have in Spokane Valley. And we have Willard done for in Liberty Lake. So along those lines, I wonder whether we could consider looking for existing facilities in the area to utilize, maybe to lease, and make a leasehold improvement even. This comes to mind, I don't know anything about that bank building there on Appleway by the park. Who owns that? It's been sitting there for 10 years since I've lived here, and nobody ever does anything with it. It just sits there. Can we talk to somebody, you know, who owns it? Can we lease it? You know, are there other buildings or facilities within the city that we can consider leasing for some of our recreational purposes?
we could look at that, and I think just that particular building has a land lease underneath it. And that's one of the drawbacks to the building. So it's on this property. And, you know, they had it up for sale for $200,000, that whole building, but, you know, it comes with the ground land lease, which is extremely expensive. We do know who owns it, and we can investigate that as an opportunity. I think that kind of brings to play a little bit from our Parks and Arts Commission, et cetera. You know, because it might be an artistic type thing that, you know, the senior want to do or whatever. I look for opportunities to partner with others, and that could be like the hub. Right now it's sports facilities, but it could be, you know, meeting rooms, et cetera. So, and there may be some property over there available, or an expansion piece to the hub that the city could consider for the long-term operations, so. But that's a great point, Bob, and I think one of the things we want to do is make sure we have an inventory of the buildings that we do have available in our community, and what some of the viable opportunities are.
I just don't know who's in charge of that, or who can pick up the ball and run with it relative to that kind of a thing. That belongs in Parks and Arts, or Recreation Commission, it would certainly belong there.
Lisa, I want you to bring that up with your crew, because you have those meetings, you're the Parks, Art, Planning, Building, so I think you have that control.
I think it would be something that could be looked at as, again, it requires some strategic planning, some master planning for just that purpose, and again, siting, et cetera, would be part of that. It certainly would be something that we could work through the planning commission. Again, the question just is one of, we've got the town square master plan and the trailhead master plan, and depending upon what comes out of those may also, so there may be a temporary solution and a longer-term solution. One of the longer-term solutions may actually be tied to what we're already doing in terms of master planning.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to say, when we spent a lot of time looking at trailhead, one of the things that was brought up was the possibility of having that space over there would be used for senior citizens. Matter of fact, Bob, you're the one that brought that up at the time, which I thought was good. So I think there is things in the works for that.
And meeting space, community meeting space is absolutely part of the RFP.
Right, which leads us to expansion here.
Okay, so we got through box number one.
Facilities asset.
Any additional comments on box number one, Mike?
I'd like to say about the whole process that I'm impressed with staff, because this one is dated October 3rd, and on September 3rd, 1 month before, it was accumulated $3,463,000. Now we're down to $1,550,000. So you peel off about $2 million per regular.
Okay. So now we're at Parks and Public Facilities Asset Management. Okay, and park improvements.
This is a rollover of a project that we did this year. We didn't get any bidders, so we're going to be bidding it next year. This is the irrigation system that it's at the end of its life and beyond.
A quick question on that, I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail because I saw that. Any particular reason that you can think of that we didn't get any bids on that?
Timing. I think all the irrigation guys are just slammed right now, and we bid it too late. And so we plan to bid it and have it complete before Memorial Day. So probably put it back out to bid the next week or two.
November,
November.
we're going to put it back out to bid. And it should be all wrapped up with what they're doing.
By Memorial Day, that's our goal.
Thank you.
Rocky Hill Park improvements. Talked about that a little bit. Jennifer?
Again, yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Jen. She can speak to specifically the asset management piece of
Okay.
this.
So initially, when the asset software provided me with a report on all of the needs and the ratings between good condition and critical condition and urgent, there was a lot of items that needed attention for 2019 and 2020. And initially, when I put the budget together, I included those raw projects that were supposed to come due this year and next year. And this year, it rolled into 2020, so all of a sudden 2020 was a very big number. So what I ended up doing is going through the software and planning out 30 years and taking, instead of front-loading the budget and burdening the budget with all these things and then trying to prioritize, and then on top of that, not having enough staff resources to manage everything, what we did is take it like a savings bank, and if we can allot so much every year over the next 30 years, we're able to see what kind of a condition we can maintain our facilities in. Will it end up being critical in 30 years? Will it end up being poor, good, fair? And so with that, I kind of talked with Katie and other staff and concluded that if we can maintain our buildings and our facilities through asset management, that's maintenance basically, capital maintenance, in a fair condition over the next 30 years, that's a great goal we think to have. And so these numbers that you see are actually producing, this is not just a 6-year number, this is actually a 30-year number. So it will actually produce our facilities to have fair condition ratings. It doesn't account for surprises that will happen, but it's proactive maintenance and proactive thinking. It's HVAC systems and flooring, roofing, shell, paint, that kind of thing. So if you look at the numbers and you think they seem a little low, it's over the long haul.
Okay. So Rocky Hill, trailhead improvements is gonna be in the master plan, I assume, right? Orchard Park improvements, 41,000, it's just
Is that the court?
That's
or
the sports court.
sports court, okay, there you go. And then you have the,
Mr. Mayor.
tap part,
Jen, I love this, I love long-term number of projections. Is there a cost of goods that you put on the 30 year, or is it truly every year, every year for 30 years?
I'm sorry, say that
Is
one.
is there a cost of goods or some sort of inflation that you've added on those numbers over a 30-year period? It's not
No,
reflected here.
no, it's not reflected there. Each year, as the software updates, it adds in inflation, so it will be accounted for in future years as the software rolls over into a new year.
This might be an RJ. Did RJ just leave? There you are, sorry. Do you agree with that methodology when we're looking at long-term capital projections?
I think doing the proactive maintenance portion of what Jen's expression of keeping the buildings, not letting them fall apart, you're gonna have surprises, and that's why we have a building contingency sitting there to take care of those. Building burns down or something like that, we can jump and move into that, but we're not even the first year of the data, and so that's what we're going to see how.
I know where you're going. So these are all based on today's dollars, and what we need to do is put in the future value of these dollars in the out years. So every time we do this, $3,000 today isn't going to be $3,000 tomorrow. So we need to build in some of those
And
inflations.
I can add future valuing to this, but the decision last year was that we were going to operate in 2020 dollars. And so if you would like to see this, again, I'd like a motion if you'd like to see this, but I absolutely can future value these.
Maybe it's just something that just came up, and I think this is wonderful for today and for the purposes of today's discussion, but I think it would be great to have another discussion around what is fair, what's kind of a fair value. I can't remember exactly how you just worded it, but you used the word fair, I think.
The fair
Fair
condition
condition.
status.
30 years from now, and are we truly budgeting enough into these, or
And I can ask the software folks, we're still working through the training, so I can ask them how they would, I'm sure they have an answer for that.
probably, yeah.
And there's probably a way I can change that around so you can see it that way.
What I understand too, the software doing it's going to evaluate those changes each year, so if we're falling behind, the system's going to let us know that, and so our fair condition will come poor, and then maybe we may have to, at that point, even up the process.
So maybe just another conversation around that at a future date would be great.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. If I could jump back, we're referring to Rocky Hill. Now, that's improvements, for $3,000. That's not any maintenance or anything like that.
It's capital
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 improvements.
improvements.
I appreciate the long term. That's how I operate, that is good. I guess the question is that a realistic number? What happens if we have to resurface the tennis court or something like that this next year?
So
Try to get 10 or 15,000.
Yes, so this number is an average, and so what happens is, one year you may not have any required needs, and maybe 2 or 3 years, but then the 5th year, you're gonna have to resurface your courts to the tune of $30,000. So the idea is, it will even itself out, but prevent that overload in 1 year of all of a sudden everything coming due and needing, improvements. So this is the way to balance that. And RJ and I have been working on how to best manage that, because it's not a typical, that's not the typical way we do our budgets. Is year after year, allotting a certain amount of money. We don't usually do our maintenance budgeting that way.
We're not anticipating anything in 2020 that Rocky Hill is going to need any improvements or anything.
I have a list, so I'd have to refer back to my list. I think we had $1,000 worth of improvements for
Because
next year.
if it does come up, it's over the dollar amount, it's a budget adjustment, and I never have a
Exactly.
challenge with that.
Yeah. And that will come up from year to year, so if I say in 6 years, we're gonna need to redo the sports courts for $30,000, we'll start seeing that ahead by
Right.
2 or 3 years and get some forewarning in there that will need to be done, but yet we haven't spent the $3,000. And RJ help me, because RJ and I keep going back and forth on this.
One of the things we've been talking about too, since we have a building contingency fund, the other type is an equipment replacement fund, is establishing that, parking some dollars that we already have saved into that to help manage things. Rocky Hill is one that's interesting because it's not quite, it's an 11-year-old park, so a lot of its long-term needs are, we haven't even gotten there yet.
You read my mind, RJ, thanks for going that direction.
Thank you.
Did you have a turn? You,
My only struggle still is, you guys are having a lot of conversations in the background that we're not able to see, is that this makes it, the way you're laying it out at 3,000 per year or 50,000 per year, just going forward, I think, from my personal perspective, it makes it difficult for me to use that to help prioritize when we're looking at that versus a sound system or that versus something else. I don't really see where the big staff need is going to stack up somewhere on you, or where the big dollar need is going to stack up on you, and so it's going to be really difficult to say 50 grand for City Hall building improvements every year for the next 7 years apparently, and which years are actually going to fall into that we're going to need to weigh that against and prioritize that against another project. So I love it, but that's my struggle with looking at
And
how that's,
I
does that make
I actually did a breakdown of the CFP. I took her data in our original spreadsheet before I did this 30-year trend. I took the front-loaded, so I have one table that shows front-loaded numbers and the weight of that, and then I have the second table, which is what you're looking at right here, over the 30-year trend. And I mean, that would show you the
I have no doubt you got it
Yeah.
on your, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
But for us to be able to prioritize it, I think it'd be really helpful to see that.
Yeah, and I do have facility detail of projects and the urgencies of each one.
So what Jen and I, when we talked about it, we agreed that fair was the place we wanted to be, and by investing this incremental amount, and I think you can see it in all of the projects, there's kind of the same amount of dollars being spent, kept us in that category, knowing that some years you're gonna bunch your dollars with other years to do something larger. And then the capital, above the line where there's the blue area, that's more the capital projects as opposed to the asset management. So.
James,
I think this is all great information, and this is a conversation for another time, but I would love to learn more about what defines fair versus good.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
intrigued, I'm very intrigued with the software, and
It's amazing.
it's, yeah, I
It's
would
amazing.
love to know how those work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I love the direction you guys are going with regards to setting aside, the different funds, because, still looking for the day when we can call Dave Ramsey and say we're debt-free, but this is a great way to plan for the future and continue to pay cash for our projects.
Well, and again, it helps us be realistic with, not only if you try to tackle every project, it's a burden on the budget, but our staff can't manage that. We don't have the resources to do that. So if we're gonna take the top 3 priorities for next year and do them, well, then that fits the scenario you're looking at much, much easier than the scenario of just front loading everything and trying to knock it out and then not getting it, 3/4 of it completed.
Great job, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, yeah. Okay, 12 trailhead improvements, we talked about Orchard Park improvements, 41,000, we talked about that a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Town square improvements, we talked a little bit about that. Liver Lake ball fields, I think we're pretty much done there, right? Okay. City Hall, and congratulations, I mean, that place sparkles today, it really looks nice. City Hall building improvements, and we have the 50-50-50. I think some of the things that would be beneficial is to have kind of is it in the sheet in here as to what the plan is for City Hall improvements?
In the pink area, this is all just asset management. This is
So
not
just-
adding on to it, it's
It's
just
just
maintaining what we have.
Okay, so just paint and,
Alarm systems,
okay, good.
sprinkler systems, painting.
Just want to make sure we understand what we're talking about, the 50,000.
And we've been determined that's a $50,000 figure.
Right.
Okay.
Some years it might be more or less, but again, it's only maintaining the facility, not.
Very good, thank you.
And then same thing with the library.
Right,
Please.
the big item on that in 2020 is our generator. It's a backup generator that we need.
Okay.
And I believe, RJ, that's coming out of our
Could come out,
emergency.
No, because we're doing it next year, it's not an emergency, it's a redeliverable expense.
We are pursuing a grant, I think,
We're working with Amoresco to
see if it qualifies.
see if it qualifies for energy savings grants.
And that's a backup for our police department library facility. It's just critical that we get that working.
Okay. So we're done with the pink section, right? Moving on to the
Question? I still want to make a comment. You guys cut $2 million off of me. That's commendable. But that's a huge dollar amount. You obviously went back to basics and started looking at the numbers realistically. More realistic, I should say.
I think a lot of that actually, or a good portion of it was from taking that front-loaded cost from the original asset improvements and going over that 30-year period, because it was really heavy.
The trailhead improvements was in there too, and I think that was like $500,000.
It was $750,000.
Right, yeah.
So we
So that came out.
decided, I probably pushed hard to get that off there because we were doing the master plan and it didn't make sense to put that number out there.
Yeah, it was like I was looking at just the number, $250,000 on City Hall building improvements. So she took that number, just sort of stretched it out over the 30 years,
Yeah.
anticipating.
Yes. So this, the example being, and I'll tell you, the City Hall building improvements was $666,000 from 2020 to 25. We were able to get it to $350,000, so we halved it by taking it and spreading it over the 30 years, allowing the percentage to keep it in a fair condition state versus trying to tackle every single project that the software is
Right.
recommended be done for the next 5 years.
I guess what I'm subconsciously looking at is a dollar amount of doing a project such as this, that we budgeted for something at one point, just thinking. Thanks, Jen.
Great.
So we're in section number 3, transportation capital projects. We'll start with Harvard Road Bridge widening and I-90 westbound on-ramp, Henry Road overpass. Okay? Any other questions about that?
Yeah, is the Parker Road roundabout included in that?
It's in Barker Road Roundabout is in the Valleys program, in our program.
And I don't believe that will be in our,
So is that why the total is coming to 17,250 and not higher? I'm trying to figure out where that number
That
comes
is
from.
correct. So the 26.9 minus the dollars that were expended this year for the design of Harvard and the design of Barker takes you down to 17,250. So that's design and, that's the construction of the widening and the design and construction of Henry.
But to clarify for the public, we're not expecting to pay $17.2
You're
million.
absolutely correct. We're, just to reiterate, our commitment was 6 million minus credits.
Right.
And we expect that, at this point, that all those funds would come from the TIF.
Okay, Mike?
I'd like to point out though is that for the public and everybody's information is the Barker Road, even though it's not in the city, was part of the $20.9 or $27 million project.
Absolutely.
And I want to reiterate for the benefit of the citizens, is that we will not be liable for any overages on the Barker Road.
That is correct. Per the way that the draft agreement, we worked on it again today. We're getting really close, and I hope to have it complete so that council can approve it at a special meeting after the 15th. So I think there's the 22nd and the 29th. So I'm trying to tee it up for just a meeting with one thing on the agenda, and that would be to approve the agreement with Washdown.
Is the appraisal in?
It's underway. The appraiser told me that we should have it the 15th and no later than the 22nd. And then we also are doing a determination of value, and I'm meeting with that appraiser on Thursday. Because the state, not only do you have to do one appraisal, now you have to do an appraisal of the appraisal. So, or an assessment of the appraisal. So yes, we should have those. I don't know that we'll have the first appraisal complete when the contract comes. I don't think I'll have the second one complete.
Thank you.
Okay, Country Vista Legacy Bridge intersection improvements, we have
That's
575.
Yeah, that's yellowed out specifically because we're moving it up to 2020, the 115,000 is for design. The reason why we moved forward with the counts is so that we could get the network analysis and corridor study underway so that we can do design in 2020.
Okay. Then we're at Country Vista operational traffic calming improvements. And Scott's gonna working on that, is that correct?
Yeah, so some of that will be informed by the corridor study.
Right.
And so, but the concept is that we would have traffic calming in the form of islands, not necessarily, not a la Appleway, but more a la Liberty Lake Road. So a little bit less planted, but we think that that's going to be good for traffic calming. It should also address where we need pedestrian crossings as well as intersection improvements. And so, so having that will absolutely inform that. I will say that on this particular one, we had originally had an overlay for Country Vista, but because we're going to, an overlay that was in out years that has now been removed from the project because this will involve the paving as well. So,
Lisa, I have a question. When was the last time that we did the network analysis or traffic study?
so that was actually, I'm going to go with this week.
It was completed in January of 2017. The
It was
analysis-
adopted in 2017.
Yeah, and the numbers were collected in 2016.
Now, one of the things that it did recommend, and it was that we should be updating this every 2 years. And I will say that the analysis was premised on an erroneous build-out
So
assumption.
she's talking about Harvard Road mitigation. So the traffic analysis was completed in 2016. We did the Harvard Road mitigation fee adjustments in 2014. And the recommendation was you update it every 2 years. And the build-out was based on that 24,000 population. So part of this network analysis is not only going to help us design the intersections along that corridor, it's also going to help us update the Harvard Road mitigation fee. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Okay. Country Vista Mission intersection improvements. Country Vista Appleway intersection.
It's by the sewer water district.
West.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, and then the Appleway improvements fairway to east city limits, so this is,
Where we ended the last project and we continue it to city limits, heading east out of town.
and that's a tip thing?
That's our goal.
Did we skip the Country Vista and Appleway intersection?
Yeah. We did.
Okay, so that's the one that we, where the flashing beacon is right now, so we're looking at that intersection and making some adjustments.
At the new punch through there? So we're not looking at that till 2023. So I know we had done the temporary restriping to make that right-hand turn a little safer. I know there's still a lot of challenges in there.
So when we did the Appleway improvement from Ruby Lake Road to Fairways, I think is what the name of the street is, we put in the medians and the protected turning movements. So this was, the idea of this project would be a continuation of that. So it's not, the volumes at this point don't appear that we need to do channelization, but as that property develops on the north side, we know we're gonna have to, there's gonna have to be some protected turning movements.
Thanks.
Okay. So we call it that, and then Mission Avenue frontage improvements, south city limits, east to Glenbrook. Right, that's
Over in the River District.
River District on Mission.
We're getting really positive feedback for the sidewalk that went in, and now there's other neighbors that are hoping that we can continue installing sidewalks further to the west.
Okay. And the network analysis update quarter study.
Yes, and that's the one where you've authorized the counts to proceed. We're combining the corridor study with the network analysis because it makes sense to do that both from a staff management perspective, staff time as well as efficiency in consultants' work. We think we're going to realize a cost savings combining those two.
Okay.
But again, I think it's also going to produce a much better result. And so you have authorized the traffic counts to occur, and that's going to be happening in the next several weeks. We'll be bringing forward a contract for the network analysis and corridor study. We have $50,000 in this year's budget, and we want to, and so we have the money to start that. We're asking for additional money next year to continue that work, so that we can update the network analysis, we can update our Harvard Road mitigation plans, and we can have the corridor studies done. So that's
Okay. Moving to signals, CVSD high school main entrance, so that's a signal, right? So
yes, this is we have applied for a TRB grant for 70% of that. We won't know until November, but we are anticipating a positive outcome from that grant application.
okay, and smart signal control?
Smart signal control, yeah. So originally we had anticipated, and we had intended for the Madison signal to include the smart technology so that the signals communicate with one another. That was not part of the bid proposal apparently, and so now we are, so we will have to address that. Again, this is it's providing the smart technology so there's communication and so that we can get the signal timing down so that signals along the corridor are coordinated one with the other.
So that, and it also collects data on just turning movements and trips. So right now, if we want to know how much capacity we have at our intersections and which way the majority of the traffic is turning, we have to go out there and do counts. This smart technology is real time, and a lot of municipalities are moving to this so that you can just look at it and determine what adjustments you need to make operationally based on real numbers, real time, especially times of day, because we all know in Liberty Lake, I think our peak is 3:30 to about 5. After 5, it tends to lighten a little bit. But it's those kinds of numbers that we can't get now without a full corridor study. So smart technology is what we're looking at along the Appleway and Country Vista corridor, especially when the high school opens.
Is there going to be an ongoing yearly fee for that software?
I don't believe so. You know, we're gonna have to bring more information back. We talked to a consultant, we got some information, so this is just a kind of a budget number.
Much needed.
But we need, there's a lot more details that Scott has.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Second,
Well, I just want to recognize the primary objectives in 2020, that being the overpass and the widening project, along with intersection improvements for Country Vista, Legacy Ridge Drive, and our Ridgeline High School. To me, those definitely are the places to focus on for the 2020 plan.
okay, moving on to the number 4, which is transportation asset management, annual residential street maintenance allocation. Kate, why don't you talk about that?
So we have every other year spend roughly $500,000 on an overlay or a rebuild of a residential street. We didn't spend it this year because RJ wanted us to quote unquote give it a rest. So 2021, we have $550,000, and we will, obviously this is designed in 2020 for construction in 2021. And we're trying to, as you can see, every other year spending that $500,000. And then RJ, as far as the cash flow, this is primarily funded by our utility tax. Okay, so we use our utility tax to every other year tackle a residential street project. To be honest with you, I don't know where the next location is going to be. We're looking at one of the older neighborhoods over in the River District. There's some other neighborhoods, I think on the north side of Boone, that general area that might need some overlays as well. So this is just an every other year overlay or grinded overlay, so to speak, of a residential neighborhood.
The other thing that I want to point out, Katie, is that we were very intentional about pushing out the $550,000 in 2020 because of capacity for Jen's crew as well as capacity for Scott. And we've got a lot going on, obviously, transportation-wise in 2020, and that was just more than the group could handle.
Okay. Any of Liberty Lake Road maintenance?
Questions? So the natural question to follow, we collect $800,000+ a year in utility tax to go toward the maintenance. So if we're only looking at spending about $600 every 2 years combined, where is the rest of that going? Are we looking at using that for the other items on this, in this section?
So half of it does go towards operation and maintenance for the streets, the other half does go into the streets capital. We've been, up until this last year, we've been doing project year after year after year, so basically when it comes in, we're spending it right away. We want that to be able to do some of these larger projects. Last year we did the Heights, and that took it significantly out.
So we also have potholes, crack seal, snow removal.
I just want, our public to realize that, no, we're not building up some sort of slush fund, but utility tax is being spent. You're just not necessarily seeing all the detail.
A little bit of slush. It's been utilized of significance, so we can, to do these larger projects, we want to be ready. Doing the Heights last year, definitely.
Understand one thing, the utility tax dollars are going into our streets and roads.
Yeah.
Streets and roads.
And there is no funding for local street maintenance.
Correct, I get that, but if I was,
Right.
somebody who had been sitting up here for a long time, I would look at that and say, well, they need to reduce my utility tax because they're only spending X. So I just want to make
So
sure.
we've been spending it every year, putting that money to work. Because of these future projects out there, because we do get things that come up like the emergency that happened out on Mission Road, we had to use this fund to help perform that road, tire maintenance and repairs, snow removal. So we really want to get just a little bit so we can do a program next year.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
back on the residential street maintenance. A good example is when the Heights came up and we were looking at doing that. The council brought up and we started discussing, is there a list of priorities to show roads that really shouldn't need to be done before others? And like over at River District, we understand in that Boulder District where they have little mobile homes, things like that there. And I remember at the time, the council was really unanimously in favor of getting a study done or something like that, so we would have a list of what the priorities are. So where are we with that?
So if you saw the paper last week, the Valley has a car that drives around all of their streets, and it's all very, very data-driven. And it basically does a condition assessment of every single road that the Valley has. So next year when it comes, Scott's been in conversation with the Valley so that we can have them drive our streets and try to do a technical assessment of the condition of our roads, so help us prioritize it. What we do have, Mike, is a little bit dated. It was done, I would say 2007, 8, 9, and it was based on the assessment that when Andrew was here, he was doing a street assessment. And they were kind of jumping around different, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit there. And so we've kind of taken an approach where we do a whole street, like we did Sutler one year, and like we've done a whole Valleyway and Mission, and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, when that car comes back next year, we want to hire it to help us do our assessment.
Great, I love that idea. Do we have that in our budget?
Yes, I think that's the $50,000.
Yeah, it was surprisingly inexpensive for what it was doing, at least from what I read about the Valley.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So then we have mission to Country Vista Grind Overlay, right? And that finishes, I think, section number 4, chapter 4, right? So we're at section 5, which is trails and pedestrian pathways. So we have annual pedestrian crossing allocation. Any questions there?
Does the flashing lights come into that?
I believe that's.
It's all, yes, it's included in that. The flashing beacon is part of our, every year we allocate so many dollars to pedestrian improvements, and that's included in, I think it's project number 30, Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes, and we have 65,000. Now, do we feel with the ones that we have on the list that are priorities and stuff, and others that will probably happen, do we have, is 65 sufficient to cover that?
We generally, Scott's going to be better equipped to answer that question than I am. Generally speaking, if we have 65,000, then we find $65,000 worth of pedestrian improvements.
Okay.
So we try to hold ourselves to that budget.
Well, because we've had so much discussion on those lights, flashing lights, I hope that we're going to be in a position where we will have more than just one sitting in the warehouse in the event that one gets damaged or something like that. They will have an inventory of 3 or 4, whatever is going to be necessary.
Well,
So we can keep ahead of this.
The reason for this should cover, I believe, 3. The reason why it's higher in 2020 is to get an additional one in the inventory. And that was and by the way, that was already approved by this body as part of the 6-year transportation improvement plan. That's why it's reflected here as a 6-year.
So you're saying for 2020, we have it in there to have a spare in the warehouse?
Yeah, that's.
Well, we already did that to have a spare, because we purchased 3 with the idea that 2 were going out and the 1 would be used as a spare.
That's what you approved, so that is in there.
So that's going to be a few other spares, I hope.
We really don't have a warehouse, so we can only, but we're going to get one, so.
Very good.
So a question, have we done anything to evaluate the accident that occurred at the roundabout in the River District?
Yeah, but we'll give you an update here later on, okay?
Okay.
Trail lighting master plan. Oops, I'm sorry.
Trail lighting, yep, 2022.
2022, we have 25,000. Pedestrian trail Selkirk Middle School to the hub. Is it 2025?
We've had quite a discussion on that, so it'll be interesting, but I see push out to 2025.
I find it was interesting that it was, we need it now, a month or 2 ago, and now it's in 2025.
Well, the only reason it's at 2025 is when we talked about the capital facilities plan, and at the council's time, that particular conversation came up. I think you made the motion to bring it in, and Dan made the motion to put it in 2025, so I'd love to have it tomorrow.
I went out and wanted that today, just familiarize myself with it again.
But you can change that year if that year's not the right year.
Absolutely, that's just what you approved in the 6-year tip. So again, if you want to change it, you can change it, but this reflects what you've already adopted.
I'm personally comfortable without the 2025, because that's going to give us a period of 5 years to see what's going to happen in that area, over there with additional roads, development, or whatever the case may be.
Second that.
Okay. Second thing, sidewalk improvements, Madison from Mission to Appalachia.
So there's a gap on the north side of the north segment of that street, on both sides actually. And this was in capital facility plan last year. It was not funded. We do have a total dollar amount because I was able to basically estimate it based upon what it actually costs to do the sidewalk on Mission between Glenbrook and that sidewalk gap. So we used those numbers to come up with an estimate. We wanted you to have a sense of how much it would cost to address that sidewalk gap.
So this is one, Matson just north of our library. This is one location where there's no sidewalk on either side of Matson. If you recall, there's a traffic signal going in at Matson, and you have some, I think it's Express Scripts and some other employer groups there. Paul Com used to be there. Anyway, there is nowhere to walk except in the street. And so this was an idea to put in a connection between our library north to Matson.
And there is the right of way to do it. It's the cost of actually installing.
So is that REIT eligible as well or no?
Pardon?
Is that REIT eligible, something like that?
Um,
Just curious.
I'll check to verify. If it's in the capital facilities plan, so that's the first step. Paul's in there, and I will.
I'd like to list that to 2022. I think that's a relevant project time.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'd like to move that to 2022.
Which one was that again, Dan?
Sidewalk improvements from Matson Mission Way to Mission
One
Appleway.
right after 33.
Yeah.
280
Yeah,
and 22, right?
yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
The question is that the Madsen, thanks Dan for bringing that up, Madsen, that's all commercial along there,
Yes, it is.
right? So why, I have to question, why would we be putting sidewalks on both sides in a commercial area where there's no residential?
So there's a bus stop, there's the signal, there's pedestrians that still walk and employees that still walk. And there is no choice, there's no sidewalk on either side of the street. So, I mean, that's a good question.
Would it just be one side or both?
We're only looking at one side, Councilmember Kennedy, so at least there's a sidewalk on one side of the street.
I'd offer, Mike, that employees, specifically health plans that advocate for walking, really encourage people to get out of lunch hour and get around. I really want to create the opportunity for that.
Amazing enough, I'm really not against that, because I think it's good if we're going to do that, we're going to make that sort of commitment, then certainly the city can make commitment to look throughout the entire city. Where is it where we can extend sidewalks for the benefit of our citizens?
That's what the sidewalk
Okay,
master
I
plan
think
is
that's
about.
very important as we move forward.
That's what the sidewalk master plan is about.
Right.
Is doing just that and looking, identifying where the gaps are, prioritizing them based upon safe routes to school, pedestrian activity, those sorts of things, and making sure that we're creating connections. So that is, and again, that's one that we heard from this council, and so we've put it in the curricula as something for you to consider. We don't think that we don't think that we can do that before we have the network analysis and corridor study done, because that will help inform that sidewalk master plan.
So sidewalks improvement Mission Avenue north side, west of Harvest Parkway roundabout.
Yes, so there's,
So that's the north side. where we
yes,
have
on the north
trail
side,
now.
there's a gap of like 3 parcels on the
Right.
north side that this would enable us to address.
One of the things that this is primarily driven by developer funding, is that correct, with these sidewalks? Is this sidewalk on the north side?
No, we funded those. Developer-driven only happens at the time of platting and new development if we had a minor subdivision there, but this is not likely to ever develop beyond what it is today, or possibly replacement of that, but,
No, I'm talking sidewalk improvements, Mission Avenue, north side, west of Harvard Parkway Broadway. Did we do that already, or?
We did on the
Well,
north side,
part of
there's
it.
more.
part of it, but they're way farther west, almost to the edge of the
We
city.
still have gaps.
Okay.
There's a 3 parcel.
If I could offer
There's
something.
older homes that belong there that never had
If I
sidewalks.
could offer something, Mayor,
Sure.
if you've been on Mission from Barker going west,
Right.
that whole sidewalk, curb and gutter was all built with grant money.
Yeah.
And because of the proximity to the school, I drove it this past weekend, and it's, what an amazing investment the valley made in that neighborhood. What we haven't done, and I talked to Lisa about, is pursuing grant funding for these sidewalks, especially when you can make a connection to a park or to a place of employment or to a school. And so we haven't done that in the past, and I would like to pursue that.
Yeah, no, I
Which is
agree.
grant funding for
I'm not
sidewalks.
disagreeing, I just want to make sure I have the.
Okay.
Again, I think that the key to that, again, which is why I think we should invest in the sidewalk master plan, is having that kind of prioritization. If you have a document that says this is a priority for the city, you're much better off in terms of trying to do that, particularly if you're taking into consideration things like safe routes to schools, et cetera. So we definitely think that would be valuable. There are a couple different programs, for grant funding programs, including TIV has a sidewalk program.
Question?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, back on the improvements, Madsen, from Mission to Napaway. Dan, didn't I hear you give a recommendation to move that to 2022?
Yes.
Council, where are we with that? I'm okay with
We
moving to
can go for
2022.
grant funding for it, and hope for that.
So moving it to 2022, at least give it a date?
That's my objective, right?
Want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
I'd second that.
Okay. Further discussion? I hear you all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Sidewalk master plan, and I would suggest, after this conversation about sidewalks, that money be moved from 21 to 20.
We
How's
could
the
do
staff
that,
with
we could do that. We do have to complete the corridor study first, because that's going to inform
I
some of the.
understand that, sidewalks, I know the corridor. I'm just talking about, there's a lot of other sidewalks. We just talked about Madsen, we just talked about north side, it really needs to be questioned. There's one there's no sidewalk on Maxwell by the post office on either side of the street, but there's sidewalks up to it. So how do they get them altered? I mean, it's a block. So I think that we really need to have all of our sidewalks, at least our community, looked at from that standpoint. And I think the other thing that you'll find when we have a sidewalk master plan is that you'll have it'll kind of blend with our pedestrian safety. You know, because then we're going to be talking about what, do we need a landing, do we need this, whatever else there's, right?
I'd like to make a motion that we move that from 2021 to 2020.
Second.
Moving second. Further discussion?
Oh, I just observe Katie's staffing is appropriate for that, you think? Really pull that off?
Again, if we have the funding in 2020, once we wrap up the network analysis. So it will be later in 2020, but if we have the funding, we could get it going in 2020.
Further discussion? Not hearing all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. All right, so that wraps up that half section, and then now we're in blue fleet equipment.
And so Jen and her crew are here, and the following is a great big list of multiple things that we need over many, many years. Very thorough, and I guess we can answer questions, Jen. Yeah. At this point. And then following that is computers, so we probably don't need to go through all the computers. The last two pages, unless you want to.
Question, Jen, it looks like lease payments against the large pieces there, and then a lump payment at the 2021?
Correct.
Would we go on in leasing, you think, after that?
Would we what?
Go on in leasing after that?
Not that I've discussed with Stephen at this point. So,
Well, what is it,
What Stephen told me is that he would be, that they do a cost benefit analysis closer to that time frame. So,
Okay.
so I think we still have to do that analysis, and we haven't done it yet, but that's the intent.
Yeah, that's what the attachment A that we have, top of page 5, for the 4 larger piece of equipment, does talk about doing the cost benefit analysis for making the lease or purchase decision. So I
Right.
appreciate that effort.
right now, those in 19 is the lease payment, 20 is the lease payment, and 21 is projected the final lease payment and purchase.
No, that would actually be the purchase price.
That's what I'm saying, the final lease payment or purchase of that piece of equipment, so when, we would still have the benefit of it for the next 5 or 6 years,
Nice.
you know, rather than just continue to have it leased, right? And that's what it's set up.
That's great.
And the street sweeper was planned for 21, an outright purchase, I think, $300,000.
we're working on grant funding for that as well.
One of the other things you may want to look at from the standpoint of street sweepers is, you know, the quality of some of the used equipment that might be available from other cities around. City Spokane, you know, where they may have it for 5, and their rotation may be 5 or 7 years. We may pick that up for very little money and utilize it here for 1 or 2 years and put, well, there's 1/10 of the miles that they would ever put on a piece of equipment. Same thing with the airport. The airports are required to have street sweepers to sweep the runways all the time. And, you know, they get very little use, I mean, road miles, I guess. But there's an opportunity that maybe we can pick up some of that equipment for street sweeper and get it earlier to significantly reduce costs.
Question.
Yes, sure.
Mike, you want to go first?
Go on, you got your hand.
Okay, just curious, Jen, do you know off the top of your head approximately what kind of staff time and rental costs we've had with regard for street sweeping per year?
I'd have to get with Stephen on those
Okay.
numbers, but I can get those.
That'd be great, thank you.
And you know, it had, because we used to have contract for it,
Yeah.
to do it, and when we went out for RFP, the cost to do it with AAA increased significantly. So in years past, we were getting a pretty good deal. And
Just curious, saying for it,
Yeah.
anything else?
I just want to prepare you, the variance goes from
Okay.
up until 2017, you're gonna see it kind of.
And then having it on hand gives us huge flexibility to be out there immediately. That's critical for us.
We could clean up the mess from
Yeah,
still today.
yeah.
Bricks.
Thanks. Probably a question for Jen, speaking of the grader, did we purchase, or do we have the arm that goes down for snow removal,
The gate,
the gate? Were we used to lease, or had a work company doing the plowing? Did they have that at one point? Are we looking into having that?
we haven't, and probably we need Stephen here, but we did discuss the gate, which is basically what they drop when they go by
Right.
the driveway. And we have not pursued that. Right now, I know the impact.
There are pros and cons to both sides of it,
Yeah.
so it's weighing out the pros and the cons, and is it valuable enough for us to move forward
Yeah.
with?
Why I ask that is that in the last 2 farmers markets weekends, I had 3 individuals ask, do we have them? And I said I couldn't recall.
So remember, we have snow angels, and we have volunteers that are willing to help people.
It was determined with our staff that it would, as good as it sounds, it will slow plow time down. And so is that important to us, slowing plow time down to clear? Because they have to slow down to drop that. They can't plow at the speeds they normally can plow at if they don't have an arm to drop down.
Yeah, limited in Spokane as long as we did, they have them. And it solved one problem, but it created another.
Exactly,
Because it creates a berm up by your side.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the challenge.
It just pushes the snow in a different spot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
makes more snow in a different spot.
ironically, at the farmer's market on Saturday, there was a gal who stopped by, she lives in Liberty Lake, but she works in the streets department in Post Falls, and she was having that same conversation. She was so happy that we don't have them because she has to deal with it on a regular basis, and she said, you know, how cumbersome it really is. Interesting, different perspectives.
So we have some purple things there.
Yeah, so all of this equipment for through 2025 is based off of the capital fleet rotation plan that I have, that I provided to you last year. Each year is broken out on a spreadsheet, and so that's where those numbers come from. Again, you will have that detail in the budget documents. But that's where this comes from, it's part of the fleet rotation plan. And the growing community as well, growing area.
Okay. So we're just gonna go over the fleet, equipment, and asset management. Just pass that by, okay? Next 2 pages. We'll go to the utilities capital projects by others. Anything that you had to say about that, Lisa, other than the fact that others have provided it?
Yeah, so this, as I said previously, this is on our capital facilities plan because in order for it to be eligible for reimbursement under TIF and LIFT, it has to be reflected here. We did contact the Lake Water and Sewer and Greenstone specifically with respect to their projects. And so the numbers that you see updated here reflect numbers that they have provided us. I think in a couple instances that there's a couple projects that we actually did move from our transportation projects to this category, specifically Mission Improvements, Harvest Parkway, east to Oregon Road. That is developer driven. It will happen at the time that land plats. And the Harvard Road and Wellington Roundabout, which actually was in your transportation improvement plan. Actually, both of these were, but we wanted to make sure that they are projects that are being done by others. So those are some of the changes there.
Okay, Bob?
I'd just like to comment, I think it was a great decision on the part of the city and staff and city council for providing the funding for the asset management software. I think we're seeing a lot of benefits from that right now, and I think we'll continue to see that for many years in the future. Thank you.
Any other comments here? I think one of the things that is the last page we didn't talk about is page number 505, and that just talks about where the money comes from. This is just kind of a good thing for the audience to understand, the listeners. That we do look for federal, state, TIF, LIFT, REIT, impact fees, and general fund revenues, and a mix of like dollars to take care of this in
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
So I really appreciate the feedback. I think we have really good notes and we'll be able to make the changes, and there is a couple motions that we can change. What does council want to do next? Because the next council meeting a week from today, the mayor's budget comes out and the presentation is going to be included in that. We're going to make these changes and that we will reflect these changes that you've made tonight into that budget. But do you want another workshop on the content of this, separate from a council meeting?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And what council meeting would you like to bring it back to? What council meeting would you like
accept
to bring
Oh,
it back?
to vote on it?
We could bring it back with the budget in December,
That makes
so they can
sense.
adopt this and absolutely together.
Well, these
I
change,
do want to make a point though, and I want to make sure that we captured everything. There were only 2 motions tonight to change anything, so I presume that everything other than those 2 motions, and I've got them right here, the sidewalk improvements, Madison to Mission, we're changing to, we're putting it in 2022, and the sidewalk master plan, we're doing it in 2020. So those are the only changes that you have, is that correct?
Well, there's a couple that we're clarifying questions.
They have a question about the falling floors, so I'm
There
gonna
were
call
questions,
on
yes,
that.
And the art, Parks and Art.
Arts and Art, and then the senior center / community space.
Yes, I think the
So
parks
we might
have
have some ads.
dollar
for
amounts.
So we might have some ads when we come back to council.
Right.
So
Make a
so
motion.
we'll reflect some of those changes and some notes, like a line item.
I
we
will
talked about.
provide the notes from this discussion to council members. But again, to make changes to this, we need motions because the only way we can control the document is to have you as a body.
So we'll mark this up,
I will mark this up.
okay? Based on our
There's no
conversation
changes on
tonight.
this, and I will also provide you with notes.
If you see a spot that's marked up, you need a motion on to make that change, we'll make that change. at the
Okay,
time.
I will highlight that in the notes,
Right.
for this,
So let me suggest something that might be helpful. If you write that up, and then you can make a motion to accept that, and we'll incorporate it into here. Is that what you're asking?
There's too many, no, that's not, there are too many
Because there were some Rocky Hill changes as well.
wishy-washy, not wishy-washy, there were too many where there were differences of opinions. And so it really, I'll make the notes and I will highlight if you want to change this, we need a motion to
There's a
that
couple
effect.
spots, for instance, let's say the 250 for Rocky Hill parking lot expansion. So
There is
let's
no-
move that to 2021.
So,
I don't but that was a motion at the time. I can't remember.
yes,
We can make,
I can go through right now if you'd
Yeah.
like to do this, I can
No,
go.
I'm just
Right, that's
So
the
we've
example.
got that note, and so the footnote would be, when we bring this back for final approval, if that was done, can I have a motion to make that permanent, okay?
Okay.
On each one of those. That works out. Thank you.
Perfect.
Katie, over. Can I say something real quick?
Please.
I just wanted to let you know that on the council chamber recording hardware, there is an annual fee for every year.
That would be in the operating budget.
Okay, I just didn't know if that needed to be mentioned or not.
So the startup is just a little over 25,000 the first year, but then after that, there's an ongoing annual fee.
And there's a 15,000 in year 5 for equipment upgrades.
All right. Any other comments by the council?
Just a question, when we come out with the mayor's budget, we've done this the last couple of years, I assume we're going to have it in large format, fold out such as this.
Sure. Yes.
All right, so we're at 8 o'clock, and so we're at the citizen comments.
Mr. Mayor, did we not have any discussion on this sheet here, this attachment B, asset management? Any comments, I think I did have.
Well, then make a comment.
I'm sorry. Asset management facility summary, which is, I think, outstanding in the numbers. I do want to point out that of all the items that are on here, the majority of them were trailhead. And because we're looking at doing something with trailhead, that's going to shave off $233,000 in preventive maintenance, which we could put that money towards that. But I did have one question on here, is that City Hall, the little house, says no battery smoke detector, urgent, costs $1,000. If I remember correctly, we can call the fire department, they'll come out and install it for free, right? So we just saved another $1,000.
It's not included in this. I took those numbers out.
That's all.
So if it burns down, everybody get out, okay?
So we should have spent that $1,000.
Save the 1,000 tonight. All right, so any other comments from the council? Not here, Nadine, we're going to ask for citizen comments. You had an opportunity to hear them. The capital facilities plan tonight in real time. We've got a pretty good understanding of what we're doing, I think, and our projects and our discussions, so we can invite any conversation or any other comments in regards to it. There will be a public hearing on it
With the budget.
with the budget, so.
I have a question, just a simple question. Are all of the city streets done at least once a year? Or only do we sweep the arterials?
The arterials are monthly, the residential streets are twice a year, spring and fall.
Okay. Any other comments? I mean, here, we're gonna go into an executive session for that.
Mr. Mayor, but I think Councilmember Moore had asked, and it may not even be appropriate this time, because it's probably an ongoing investigation. Is there anything you could share?
Oh,
Ongoing.
Thanks.
okay.
I have a question in regards to the roundabouts. Went out there and looked at that damage today. Do we not, apparently we do not have any reflectors on our roundabouts as we're approaching those. I know that down here we have a reflector that shows going to the right, everything's turning to the right. But I don't believe we have any reflectors that are actually on the brick.
That is correct, we have lights, but we don't have reflectors,
We have signs, Katie.
and we have signs. The
There are
signs
plenty of
are-
signs, street road signs.
No, I've seen some that have paint around the curbing around about.
That's reflective.
That might be something we might want to consider.
It's a great idea.
So we discussed a lot of those options as well, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, pardon?
We've discussed
We
it
discussed
in
that,
closed
yeah.
sessions and a lot of those options as well.
Okay, good. So we'll fix it, make it better. So we're gonna have a executive session for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes.